The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Dave and I have been saying it. This nation is under siege, and we really are. In all seriousness, we really are under siege. It's not beginning; it is. This is Divided We Stand. It's a Monday night. No, it isn't. It's a Wednesday night, for Christ's sake. So sorry about that. It feels like a Monday night, But in any case, this is Divided We Stand. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. If you're unfamiliar with our page, like I said, you can find us in either one of those places. We are not monetized, so we ask that you join us. We work together. We just facilitate the group. That's about it. And if you feel you need a safe haven to express your opinion, ours is the place. So again, we are on YouTube. We are broadcasting from YouTube right now. And you can also find us on Facebook. We have quite a popular page there. People from all over the world. We have quite a few people from Canada now. And if you are living in Canada, please share and join, because we're in this thing together now. We have had a few members who have known all along that this was important to Canada. So this is a good place to be, because we have a very, very intelligent base of people who follow us and help us, and many, many Canadians. So that's good to have, because we're all on the same team on this one. All right, so without any further ado, we have our Dave Price with us. Dave, let me get you here. How are you doing tonight?
Interesting. I'm doing as well as can be expected in today's America. And of course, the reason we're doing this show, ladies, gentlemen, and boys and girls, is two. Number one, of course, it's the day after Trump tried to describe his State of the Union. I don't know if it's the State of the Union of our country. And the other thing is, as we know, Steve Bannon has said, and Trump has gone along with this, that you just flood the zone with shit. And that's what they're doing. So really, it's almost as if you would need to really do it justice, and we're not going to do that. You would always need a show every day, because Trump or MAGA or Musk or, and the ors go on, are doing something that is not good for the country. As Brian said, I agree 100% with him. It's, I'm even thinking of changing a couple of things I read about, like democracy in danger. Well, that's still true, but wow, maybe it's fascism is here would be a better, or authoritarianism. And I think that's one of the problems, Brian, that we have right now. Mm-hmm. We're not getting hung up on labels, but I mean, think about this. Is it fascism? Is it authoritarianism? Is it an oligarchy? Is it a kleptocracy? Is it a cult-led country? Is it all of the above? And it has elements of all of it. And it doesn't really matter what you label it.
Right. It's like pornography. You know it when you see it.
Yeah. Like the judge said, right? Famous Supreme Court judge. We just know that it's not America. I would, but you know what I find fascinating? You'll see it sometimes. Well, what would Ronald Reagan do? But you know what? They don't even raise Ronald Reagan's name anymore. Right. I think, when's the last time you've seen a Republican? They know that this isn't Ronald Reagan's America. Certainly, we know it's not Richard Nixon's America. Yeah, you know what, Jeff? I didn't watch it at all, but that's an excellent question. If anybody knows the answer, please post it.
I would guess no, because of his teeth. Yeah. They don't want to have it shown. Trump's like that.
It seems like to me now, Bannon is the behind-the-scenes guy now, right? It just strikes me as that way, because Elon Musk sucks most of the oxygen out of the room.
But doesn't Bannon basically get the QAnon group? He's the one who pulls that group in.
Yeah, and then of course remember he was also the editor of Breitbart. Mm-hmm. So that's his.
Still there.
I mean, yeah, and that was it. So I think I said I just looked at the highlights today and read about it. I chose not to watch it. I don't think it would have benefited me to watch it. Nothing really came out that was surprising. But why don't we go with you first, Brian? Because you said you did watch.
I was. First of all, Brian and we put it on. We decided to watch it. We only watched for 15 minutes, and that was about as much as I could take. Ronnie couldn't take it at all. So I'm watching this, and I don't want to say I was half asleep, but I'm at that point where I'm getting really tired and starting to fall. And there's a certain clarity that's it's kind of strange when you're half asleep. You think that you're not as clear. But I was focusing on things that I normally wouldn't focus on. And I was focused on the physical reactions of the people behind him, like Vance and Johnson. and I could focus on the clapping, and then the USA chants, co-opting the USA chant from the chant from the 1980 Olympics, and it just disgusts me because that was for that event, and it should have been left at that. Now everybody kind of does it, and then you're just going to come up losers each time. It was revolting, the obsequious response of all these Republicans, and then none other than Jefferson Van Drew, as Trump was coming out or coming into the lobby there, he's shaking everybody's hands and he's leaning over like he's best buddies with Trump. Dave, it was all you saw was sycophants, and it was as if it reminded me of like one of those evangelical churches where everybody's like casting devils out of people. They were following him like he was Jesus. It was I don't care whether it was through fear or that they actually do believe him, or that they actually hate us that much, because you could see Vance just waiting to find somebody that's going to interrupt or do something like that. That's all he was looking for. Dave, it was hard to take, and again, I did turn it off after 15 minutes. Just lie after lie, talking about Social Security, and it's out of the bottle now, folks. This nation is under siege, and that is the title tonight, is One Nation Under Siege, and that's what we are right now. And I don't know how we get out of this, but we have to do something. We can't turn around.
Well, and I've been around this business a long, long time. Been on the planet 72 years, and I guess I became, what should I say, activist in, well, not guess I became an activist in '68, based on what was going on in the country then, and moved all the way through my college career. And then, as I said before, I kind of viewed my two careers as activists. One was a journalist, and I kind of prided myself on being an activist journalist. And then I was an activist educator. Now, certain things you can't do. An activist educator, I didn't go out and protest. But what I did was try to make my students politically aware of things, not influence them in any way, but just to make them understand that really the two biggest forces in America have been, and more so today than ever, are, well, three really. Economics, who has money and who doesn't. Pop culture, who has fame and who doesn't. And politics, which is kind of an interweaving of those two. Mm-hmm. Now, you begin with, first of all, we all attack Donald Trump, those of us who don't like him. And I'm, at the front of that. But I hate to use a cliche, but I'm going to use one. If I apologize in advance. You have to give, and it's almost literal, you have to give the devil his due. He is an outstanding con man. Now, I know people say, no, that's not true. He has conned 1/3 of the American people into believing he is the best person in America to run America. Now, a hell of a con job. Last time I've seen anything like that is on The Wizard of Oz, when the wizard conned the people, in the Emerald City, that he was indeed, running the show. So you've got that. So then we look back, well, how's that tied with pop culture? I am convinced that, 100% convinced, that if there were no Apprentice, the show, Donald Trump would not be president. No way. That gave him a fan base, if you will, of Americans, and Americans who liked the fact that he was authoritative. He fired.
You're fired.
You're fired. And what he's now we look back. Well, what? And that was reality TV. And you know what reality TV was? Nobody expected it to take off like it did. It was the cheapest thing to run. It was even cheaper. The news was always the cheapest thing to run on television, right? Less, not less actors, less money, less of all that. Hi, Bill. But what happened then is all of a sudden this is, and you don't have to worry. And people started to believe reality TV is reality. I mean, some people aren't sophisticated. Well, it's got to be reality TV. They said it was. They were all scripted. maybe more scripted than some shows, in fact. So we go all the way back and work our way back and work our way back. And I think you work your way back. Do you know where this really now, where all this really started? Is basically prior to the establishment of America, in terms of strong federal government versus strong state government. And now, we have, for the first time since King George, 250 years, we have mention of a king in America. Okay, He's certainly a wannabe king, and we saw that. So what I want to talk about tonight briefly is we get a lot of criticism, and the Democrats, and they deserve it. Okay, they haven't led yet. I'm not going to give them the Attorney General Merrick Garland excuse. He was bad from day one. He was a bad choice, and he was a costly bad choice. However, I can understand for a moment, what do we do? Now, one of the things that the Democrats, one of their strengths is also their weaknesses. Okay, what is a Democratic strength? They appeal to a broad group of people. How does that make that a weakness? Well, there's no agreement. Like, is it this or is it that? But we saw last night the beginning. So first of all, I looked at the clip this morning. Names are not important. It could have been anybody. So there is a Democratic representative who's holding a sign as Trump walks in, right? And it's an anti-Trump kind of, how they have on the fans last night, the small. And a GOP representative, of course, from the other side, ripped the sign out of her hand. Now, that was the start before Trump issued a word. And that visually captures where we are in America right now. And from then, it was all downhill. So what did the Democrats do? Well, my hero of the night, I think, would go to Al Green, the representative from Texas, who stood up and said, "You do not have a mandate," and shaking that cane. Now, I know he didn't know this, but there are a couple fights in the Senate back around Civil War times, when it was very volatile too then, where actually senators attacked other senators or congressmen attacked them with their canes. Now, I'm sure that, maybe Representative Green, who's 77 years old, didn't know that symbolism, but I kind of thought that was interesting, the cane waving. And of course, then he's escorted out. But I watched again the clip today, and our good friend, the worst doctor in America, Ronnie Jackson, you remember him, right?
He is the worst doctor in America, yes.
He is the worst doctor in America, yes. Well, now he's vying
I mean, second, I don't know, Dr. Ross is pretty bad too, but he's bad, yes.
No,
he's the worst.
Ronnie's bad. And so anyway, Mr. Jackson now has parlayed, his closest with Trump. He is now a representative, also from the state of Texas, and on the Republican side. And I urge anyone to look at that clip. He is, when Green is standing there waving his cane, Jackson is just so infuriated. He's actually turning fire red, and he's screaming, "Get him out of here! Get him out of here! Get him out of here!" Okay, so there's a second. Not that we needed more proof that Congress should not, cannot, will not, and should not work together. Okay, they should. Now, so that's one thing the Democrats did last night. That's one person. But then, if you notice, those who watched the whole thing or watched clips this morning, Representative Jamie Crockett, and I'm very high on Jamie. I hope I'm not over inflating what she'll be able to do. But she and a number of others walked out, and as they did, they took off their jackets, right? And they all had T-shirts on, some saying resist, some saying no kings live here. Again, obvious kind of thing. Some stayed home. AOC actually had a counter programming. She did not go. Also, our representative here, Don Byers, he didn't go, and he had a call-in type thing for veterans who are losing their job. So the Democrats, they're doing certain things, and when they say we're really powerless, in essence, they are as congressmen, okay? They really are, and senators. They're outnumbered, outvoted, outgunned. However, they still have to figure out what to do. So, Brian, I have a question for you and anybody out there listening. Suppose you could get all the Democrats, both in the Senate and Congress, to agree we're going to take one action. Do you think it would have been more effective at the State of the Union to fail to show up? Or do you think it would be more effective if, as soon as Trump opened his mouth, everybody left? Which do you think would have been more effective?
Okay, first of all, it's funny you mentioned that, Dave. It is interesting because I was thinking that. I saw a couple people walk out. And I know the way Trump is with trying to fill in spaces. So if the Democrats had a premeditated idea of walking out, he would have put some people in. I don't know what he would have done, but there would have been people in there. I don't know how you do it, but I don't think he would appreciate an empty space. So I think the best thing would have been is wait till it starts, and then basically you're gonna co-opt the whole show because it was a show to Trump, and he doesn't want to have it violated. And of course, Trump doesn't come out until everybody else finishes shaking their hands. So he wants to wait. He wants to build it up and have them clap and cheer for 15, 20, 25 minutes. So I think what you said, the latter, I think would have been much better. Just everybody walk out, because then it's too late to walk, and then all of a sudden you see nothing there, and or what you do is you leave one person or one thing there, just so that the viewer has to fixate on what's that,
Right. Yeah. So, but again,
I would, because of the way I think, what I would do is, I would leave one big poster and put some unintelligible English sentence together. And that way the viewer doesn't know what's going on. They say, I got to figure that out. And everybody keeps trying to figure it out. It's kind of like you get some kind of post on Facebook, what's 15 plus 22? And you have the parentheses around it. What's the correct one? Who gives a shit about FOIL right then and there? But people do they get fascinated with that. So I'm saying you have to distract them. And so what I would do is and it wouldn't mean it had to mean anything. It just has to get the viewer to get their mind off Trump. Now, would the networks in themselves be that interested in showing? I think that would be effective. And then it would just be nothing. You know what I mean? But you play that game.
Well, I think you just said something that's very important. Whether we like it or not, politics has always been, but now more than ever, a game. It is. It's a game. And it's a game where people look for winners and they want to look for losers. And unlike a game, okay, for example, this weekend, as those who regularly watch the show know, I was in Alabama watching my grandchildren, and my grandson played in the state championship basketball game, and they got blown out. They lost, and it was fine. But there was a clear score, right? I think the final was 83-57 or something like that. But see, in politics, the score is if you win, right? So right now, the winners are MAGA Republican congressmen led by Trump. But what is different in this is Trump is not your normal politician. In fact, if there's one sign that this is not normal, we've seen that, right? And that is just a truism about Trump. This is not normal. Donald Trump, you are not normal, and this is not normal. So I think there's some struggle to figure out, okay, politics has always been kind of within this box. We do this kind of thing, right? Or we do that kind of thing. Well, now there's no box, right? So we have to rethink that. But I would give the Democrats credit. At least they did something last night. We might disagree on
right. They just didn't sit there, and they weren't
and that's and
quiet.
Right now the same is holding true across the country. I think everybody should send a letter to the National Park Service congratulating them on being They led. Think about that. They were the first ones to lead the resistance against Trump when he first came in, if you remember, when he was elected. And now they're back. Look at what's going on in the national parks. They've got flags hanging upside down. They've got signs. They're talking about it. So there is but right now it's not national, right? It's kind of broken down. And some people were saying, well, okay, And sometimes things come and we don't know. We really don't have any. I haven't seen any statistics on how effective the February 28th "Don't Buy Anything" was. But does it really have to be that effective? In other words, it's out there that happened. In other words, if you do this, Trump, we're going to do that. So at least it's something. We have to keep doing that. Now, let's get back to your favorite congressman, Jeff Van Drew. I assume that Mr. Van Drew will do what Mike Johnson said, and under no circumstances do you go back in your district and hold public meetings. Well, the minute I hear that, I'm saying that congressman needs to go, right? You're supposed to hold public. So if he won't, my suggestion, and it's not original with me, but I've seen it and I think it's great, then you hold an empty seat meeting. If you want to make an effigy of Jeff Van Drew, fine. If you want to get somebody, if I were still in the district, I'd play Jeff Van Drew. The empty seat is pretty effective. Get a hold of people, and they ask the questions. And that oddity. Look, I was a newsman for a long time. Oddity sells newspapers. Okay, now we don't have newspapers anymore. But in other words, that is something that would be hard not to cover. Okay. Be pretty easy not to cover a regular, a congressional meeting where everybody's hunky-dory. Now let's see what Anthony has to say here. Trump has his guy answer for him on the Senate. Put that back up again, would you please, Brian? Trump has his guy answer for him on the Senate floor because he's too stupid to answer the questions Senator Sanders and others ask. So when Bernie says, "Mr. President," the president's playing golf. Well, but see again, the con man, Trump. Do you think? I haven't seen a MAGA person yet upset about his playing golf. You know why? Because he gives his salary back. Now, they're not sophisticated economically or intellectually enough to realize that his golfing trips cost millions of dollars. To move the president costs $1 million.
Right, you have to pay the staff to be around him.
Everyone. You pay
and the movement.
And the Secret Service and this and that and the other. So it's at least $1 million every time he leaves the White House, and his salary is $400,000. But see, they bought into that. It's actually imagery, and he is very good, or his advisors, or somebody is very good about capturing the image. So right now, what he's been able to portray, and we're going to have to counteract that, he is a man of action. Now, people don't stop saying, well, what's that action doing? Is it good? Is it bad? No. Oh, we want a man of action in there. And we've got our man in action. And the Democrats, unfortunately, because of Joe Biden, and Mr. Biden came and did his job, which was to push Trump out of the White House. And unfortunately, Mr. Biden, for whatever reasons, did not do what I think he should have done. And that was step aside, and let him hold a convention or something and give the person a year to run. And they didn't. Kamala Harris, I think, would have made a very great president. I only was in her presence once to hear her speak, and that was in the Ellipse. I was impressed with her as someone who didn't just speak well, but would carry it through. Now, Veg, of course, Canadians are furious. In fact, we're joking today, but I said, if the Canadians invade, I'm going to fight with them.
And I will too.
I mean, it's as if. Now, let me say one thing about this. What you have to do with Trump, or what I think you have to do with Trump. Okay, we know what he does, right? But we don't know why he does it, because it makes no sense, right? I mean, a lot of what he doesn't make sense. So you have to ask two questions. The first question is, what benefit is it to him to do what he is doing? And a lot of times you'll come up with vengeance, okay, or revenge.
He is a revenge head, you know that. I mean,
right. And the other thing is if that isn't the case, you can figure the next thing to ask is who benefits and who loses, right? And then the third is the premise we're taught the first day in newspapers back then: follow the money. It's always, almost, except Trump, it can be about vengeance. And it be now the one that we say I don't even understand enough about bingo to know this. My wife plays, but I don't. I didn't have it on my bingo card, but that's the same. I mean, it's a surprise to you. I did not see at all him taking over the Kennedy Center. I did not. That to me, I tried to portray and try to figure out what I just said, looked into it. And to me, that's a vengeful move. Do you realize that he's the first president since the opening of the Kennedy Center who never set foot in the Kennedy Center in the 4 years he was president? And it's not like he couldn't get a seat, because there's a box, and I've actually visited the box, so I know it's there. A presidential box is, I think it's six. It's either 6 or 8 seats. I can't remember which. It's there and cannot be filled by anybody other than the president and who he invites. So it just sits empty. So it's not, it's not a question of that. Now, what he does though is he doesn't say that. Look at what he says. He said we have to stop the filth that the Kennedy Center is doing, and he talks about the LGBTQ plus connection. I'm not surprised. I think that what has happened, Veg, and you're going to hear people say, oh, man, we got to be better than them. No, we don't. I'm sorry. We just have to beat them. And I don't know that torching a Tesla dealership is the right thing to do morally, but practically, I think that it pretty much shows I don't like you. I don't like your product. I don't want what you want to do. Now, Brian, we're not going to go into economics tonight. We'll save that for Sunday. But you said today, and I thought, you're absolutely right, that he hints and teases, and then today he says, well, I'm not going to do that with Mexico right now. I'm not going to do that with Canada right now.
Right. Which, I predicted. It's just that there was one day of it,
Well, I'm sure that he chose not to do it yesterday because he didn't want it to affect the impact of his speech. And I think that's another thing that is so freaking damaging. I mean, Musk does not know what the hell he's doing. No. Musk is not a smart...
And you should have seen him last night when he was introduced. He's like he was like a robot, like a little kid.
Yeah, they were saying.
Who won a second grade award for.
He is so not normal. Okay, and normally I would congratulate someone on their 14th child, but I think I'm going to pass on that. Because he is on record as saying, people, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but people like me have to produce children because we will have supermen that'll be able to run the world. Isn't that sort of Third Reichian or something? Didn't we hear about that before? But anyway, so with Trump, we're gonna have to figure out now something else. I'll go up tomorrow. I didn't go up today in the rain here. It was like so much of the East Coast. We were raining here. But I went up right before I left for Alabama. I went up to check on the White House, just see what was going on. I happened to be in the neighborhood. And for the first time in my 14 years here in Washington, D.C., without cause, okay, you could not get into Lafayette Park. The barricades took the whole People's Park, and that's what it's known as, Lafayette Park. It's the People's Park of Washington, D.C. You couldn't even get in there. Now, maybe that was because that day I was there was the day the British Prime Minister came in, and then Zelensky was day 2. And there was an increased security presence, as there should be in that case. But can you imagine, we said earlier about not Ronald Reagan, if Ronald Reagan could look down tonight and say, really? They're siding with Russia? Really? I mean, there's nobody more identified with the Cold, as a Cold War warrior, and it looked like we had defeated, right? We had defeated the communists, and now we've got Putin. And Brian, I don't know this answer, but the more I look at it, I really do think that something happened in 1987 when Trump visited, because there's only 2 options. Okay, but sorry, he is completely stupid, all right, and doesn't know what Father forgive him before they know not what they do. Secondly, he admires Putin and any strongmen so much that he wants to be them, and so he puts his ass for people to kiss behind him, and then he puts his lips firmly on Putin's anus. And the third is that Putin/Russia has something on him. Knowing Trump, I think it's probably the third combination of all, but probably the third.
Well, don't forget, when he went to Russia, I think he started in the 80s. He always,
87 was his first.
yeah, he always
first
wanted to
visit.
have the Trump Towers there, and he had the beauty pageants. You can't do anything in Russia unless you deal with the corruption there. There's
Right.
always a bribe involved, always. So there's never a clean understanding between people. It's always dirty. And for people to say, "Oh well, the Steele dossier was wrong," don't forget what intelligence agents do when they create dossiers. It's based on what they see. For example, can this person be bought off with money? Do they talk about sex constantly? Do they drink a lot?
Right. They're looking for
The
the
language
weakness.
they
Sure.
use, they're looking for psychological profiles and just trying to define that first. And that to me was an indication that there was something truthful about the Steele dossier, because that's the way an intelligence officer operates. And as we all can assume, and we kind of know, that the Soviet Union used to archive anything that was in those hotels that was going on, whether it
Oh,
was
absolutely.
audio
That
or
was-
video.
oh, absolutely.
And you couldn't get around it. People who knew it were probably just so tired of it. Like, for example, when I was in Kiev, it was kind of near Chernobyl, and it was only a couple years later. And you had to eat the food, even though it was irradiated. What are you going to do? You're hungry. You say, well, I'll eat one tomato. What the hell's the difference?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that becomes acceptable. And they archive these things. And now, of course, we're in the digital age. But my guess is, whether you think there is a no coincidence, I just think that, that's the way Russia operated. And if he was there, there's something. I don't know what it is. There's
Right.
something that's compromised him. And if this is true, if what Keith Olbermann is saying is that this guy was just a golden catch for the Russians,
Well, of
because
course.
now
And
they have a president that's like us getting the president of Russia elected. It's amazing.
And I don't think, again, people say, well, Putin could have gotten him. No, Putin was getting a businessman at that point. Okay. That's what he was getting, right? It may not have even been political. It may just be a way to launder money, like you said, through, or have this, or the corruption. But the point is that, what's the Russian word? Compromise? Is that correct? Compromise, right? And basically what that, kind of comes from the American, or not comes from, but relates to the American, you're compromised. And there's no question in my mind that Trump is compromised in many different ways. However, all that is immaterial. I posted something today on my own page about the fact that holding up and making the young child, well, teenage, or just turned teenage, a special secret service agent, with his cancer. To me, that's even more hideous, because Trump, through Musk, has removed all the government money that funds cancer research. I mean, it's one thing to, but that's the showman. And so I keep a handful of Trumpers on my page, and I try to bait them as well as I can, and then I just back off and let other people do it. But and one said the typical, well, how can you talk about morality when the Democrats didn't stand? And I thought, Jesus Christ, kid. We're talking about morality. Now, you could say, with the Democrat behavior yesterday, you could say they broke decorum. You could say it's improper. You could say you should have respect for the president. You could say all those things, right? But what they did was not a moral issue. It could have been against the law. I don't know what the laws of Congress are, in that essence.
Right.
Or it could have been against convention. You are supposed to respect the president. Well, I'll go on record as saying, I never bought that. You respect the president when he or she does something respectful, and you respect the country when they do something disrespectful, and you point out to them that. But that was not it. But what taking money from cancer research is immoral. And then you add to it the hypocrisy that is part of that, and the hooey and the hate and the heartlessness, there's a whole bunch of H's in there. I'm going to do that. So, Brian,
I think we have some people on the other side on our show tonight here,
Where?
which is good.
Let me see. What's it? Idiots aren't going to make it to the summer. Who? Live idiots. Oh, hi, David. Listen, I'm glad you're here. Sometimes, we have the same first name. Obviously, we have different political views. So, are going to make it to the summer. What's going to happen to me? Do you know something I don't know? I mean, I'm planning to make it to the summer. David, I mean, if you know something, let us know. What's the old saying? Inquiring minds want to know. Oberman is a crusty, retarded blowhard. Now, see, David, here we go again. Okay. I wish you would do this, and I would do it too. Oberman, ? That's fine. You're questioning, why would you bring him up? Fine question. I believe Oberman is a crusty, retarded blowhard. If he has a child, I probably don't think that child or maybe the child does. See, what that is that's what they say, owning the libs. I guess that's what you were trying to do. I would never presume to say to you what your motivation is. But
Dave, I'm going to let you talk. We're saying Ron needs my help for 1 second, but keep going, yeah. Dave. I'll be right back.
Did I fall on my head or did the other David fall? Okay. See, this is where it breaks down, guys. David, you've lost your mind. No. Wait a minute. My mind's right here. What you're saying is, again, in your opinion, I have lost my mind, or we collectively as liberals have lost our minds. Now, what's kind of sad, David, or at least, I don't know if sad's the word, but we feel the same way about you and yours. Now think about this for a moment. One of us, Davids, is right, and one of us, Davids, is not right on any particular issue. Would you agree with that? I mean, not every time is you, David, going to be wrong, and not every time am I, David, going to be right. But David's, we have that. So, what are you making for dinner, David? I'm not being facetious. I'm not. That's a good question. What are you making for dinner? Because I just want to know pretty much what, Dave? I'm sorry. Anyway, no. I mean, really. What I don't have. I don't get invited a lot of places where people are Trumpers, and it's old. Of course. David Jenkins, are you a psychoanalyst? Of course. Oh. Is that what we're doing there? I mean, is that what the of course is? Okay. But David, really, I'm serious, man. I want to know what you're having for dinner. It's important to me, okay? I want to see if you eat the same
food. There we go. We have the answer.
Good. Now, you know something? Isn't that amazing? I'm a liberal, and you're a Democrat. And you know what we had for dinner last night? Not going to believe this. Salad and spaghetti. So we do share some things in common. Are you trying to make a point? Or are you here to insult? See, again, project man. Oh, okay, cool. Okay, let's play a game. Not a game. That's the wrong word. I'm sorry. Let's do something just Davids can do now. Okay, I don't mean to monopolize Brian, but I got a few minutes here. So this David, who's a liberal, is going to ask
funny, that Anthony.
The other David,
that was good.
Who's a conservative, this question: if you and I were sitting in a room, not on an audience like we have here, with hundreds and hundreds of thousands, I wish, with 4 people listening or whatever's listening, let me ask you a question: what would be the first thing you would do? Okay, libertarian, got it. So. I assume, though, I'm going to make a dangerous
assumption. It's kind of like a watered-down Republican, basically.
Well,
these days.
We don't need to insult. What we need to say is this, David. Let me ask you this: would you answer this question in the affirmative? Are you a supporter of Donald Trump? Just yes or no? Because what I ask next will be hinging on that question. So, are you a supporter or not? Maybe you went to dinner. Okay, we'll come back. Well, David, just for those listening, in case you don't come back, and I hope your dinner's good, by the way. I was going to ask what kind of salad dressing you get, but you're not answering. Anyway, what my question to you is this: I would ask you this: if you are a Trump supporter, and this would go out to any Trump supporter ever. Laughing out loud, yes and no. Okay, that's a and I'm not. I can understand that, but let's do the yes part for a minute. Let's do this. Let's play a thought experiment. My friend Brian is always doing this. This is his favorite thing to do. Suppose on this point you really feel strongly that about a good point about Trump. Now, what I would ask you is this: if you and I are sitting in a room and we're having salad and spaghetti, and all the dressings, okay, that would be interesting. Here's my question: what would you say to me to try to convince me that I should support Donald Trump? And the reason I ask that question is, that would be something, and you might say, honest answer, I wouldn't, but I'd ask you to go beyond that. In other words, if you thought it was very important because for some strange reason you thought my soul was worth saving and my liberal soul was going to go to hell if I couldn't see what was good about Donald Trump, what would be the first thing you'd say? You should support Donald Trump because? Just interested to know as we go on. Brian, let's turn the short thought experiment around to you. What is, if the opposite, if you were trying to convince someone that they should not support Donald Trump, what's the first reason you would give that they should not support Donald Trump? And it can't be and. It's one thing. What would be the first thing you would say?
Well, I think the easiest one to answer, if you have any kind of intelligence, is the man doesn't believe that climate change is real. I mean, that to me is just right there. It's like saying, that they believe in Godzilla as a real monster, Sasquatch. I mean, if
wait a minute, stop for a minute. Whoa. You're going to tell me that Godzilla's not real?
No, he is real, but
No, I meant since 1954, I've been worried about that. Now I don't have to worry about it anymore. 10% for the big guy, David. It's my ignorance. I don't quite get that remark. It's not you, it's me. Could you explain that a little bit for me?
Well, basically, David, I guess what I would ask you is, given the choice of Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, which candidate of the two would you choose? And I guess I should be fair to you by saying why.
Which is kind of...
I mean, and it's a simple question. It's kind of like a question you get, with a major news source. Why?
It's like, I understand the biblical story of Jesus and turn the other cheek, but that is damn hard sometimes, okay? But it's the same thing here. We're not going to change, but in order to figure out what to do, I think we have to understand as well as we can the opposition. Okay? And the opposition really right now is not Donald Trump, although it is. It's really not Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, although it is. It's not really Trump's crazy cabinet, although it is. It's not really Steve Bannon, Joe Rogan, the others who are influencers of thought. None of them are going to change. None of them are going to change. But there is a possibility that if we could understand why Trumpers are Trumpers, and I'm not saying you have to go, say, oh, you're good people. I'm not talking about it. Just understand. And that's why I kind of liked having David on, just because of that point.
We like having Trumpers on, actually, as long as they're not rude.
Yeah, and even I don't even mind rudeness. I mean, if you feel hate toward Trumps, it's the same hate they had for Democratic Party for many decades, yes. And I think global, again, this might not have been your intent, but it's really where I'm going. There are really two starting points for all of this, for what we're facing today. The first is before we were a country. If you go back and study the prehistory of America, as we're forming, really there were two camps then. And there's really two camps now. Really, both sides are the same. Who is the end of the line either way? What is the New World Order is the end of the line either way. Okay. And then you and I could sit down, and maybe we will someday, who knows? And we can talk about that New World Order and all of that. But again, I want to thank you. You answered the questions. And that's good.
By the way, that is the way a lot of people think. They'll say, well, they're all the same. They're all working together. And that narrative has always been thrown out there, that they're always, the elite. They're under the control of the elite. but you can't say that,
Well, you can say it, but
Something you can say it, but you
Yeah.
can't with 100% assurity, like in fact, not even 50% assurity, know that that's the case because there's so many competing elements,
well, that's
even within the
and
same party.
Um, I just think Keith Oldham is a paid shill, just like the shills on the right.
Well, he's not our concern tonight, Keith
No,
Oldham.
no,
I
but
mean,
David,
I
David,
did mention his name.
But what we're saying is, if I understand it, and David, I always hesitate to put words in anyone's mouth. But if I had to, based on just this short time, go get that hamburger. Wife arrives. Give your wife a hug. Tell her hi for us, and
And tell her
enjoy that
to
dinner.
subscribe to Divided We Stand on
Well,
YouTube.
welcome, and you're welcome to come back anytime. You
Yeah,
really
come
are.
back.
And so what
I
happens?
think
is that-
Sandy's right about that. Keith Oldham he's just not on the payroll of anybody
Well,
right now except himself.
at one level, what David said has been true, sort of. Okay, in this respect, no political party wins without money, and rich people have the most money. Okay,
And they live longer too, rich people.
everything. I mean, we could go all into that, but the difference is, I think I have not found a Democrat. Your family hates Trump. Well, there that's kind of David. Where we all have that going on, no matter where we are. Unfortunately, I think. Well, again, I'll say it this way: prior to Trump's first election, I really thought that the country was most divided in my lifetime from 1968 to Nixon's resignation. And I believe that to be true. It is not true now. And I think the difference between the two parties right now, or the biggest difference is, we don't know whether it's fascism, authoritarianism, oligarchy.
See you, Kim.
But it's not democracy. And that's what concerns me. And that's why I would say to anyone who says they're both the same, that they're not. One party struggles more with the idea of trying to be democratic and doesn't always reach its goal. And the other party right now has no interest in being. So, again, I'm not saying it was interesting to have David on. Is that something?
We get one every month or so, don't we?
Oh, no. Oh, well, yeah, but no. But what I thought was interesting is if that were, we'd have to make a decision. We all do. And so just say we all have probably a David floating around out there somewhere, right? I mean, he didn't sound totally unreasonable, right? I mean,
but there is this focus on liberals, like, the libs, that idea of the libs. They just, that is the major focus. And you have friends, and I have mutual friends who are like that, where they say they're not political, but they hate the libs. There's just something about us. It's like,
I've been.
You're mad at the guy next door who's getting laid, because you're not getting laid or something like that. It's just
no. Well, I think what we represent to them is what they fear most, and that is change, and they're going to lose out in that change. Now, what they don't understand is we all should be fearing the oligarchs. I mean, that's who really, they're the real enemy. Trump will come and go.
As if billions of dollars weren't enough.
And there you are. Okay. So, if somebody would ask me who is the real enemy, it is, to put a face to it, it's Musk, it's Bezos, it's Zuckerberg, it's all of those. And that is, the question is, we'll leave with this tonight. I'll ask it tomorrow on the page, and everybody can answer it tomorrow that sees it in the page chooses. And Brian, I'm going to ask it of you first, and that'll be the last thing I do. Who do you think, what is the one person or the group, if it's not a person, who is running the country right now? Hard question, I know.
I'll say this much. from what I can see, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it MAGA, you say Trump, the oligarchs, it's those people. That's why I'm glad David came on with those comments, because I think there's this great disdain for us. It's the people who have a passionate hate for liberals and democracies. It's a Russian thing, It's that fear of what happened with the French Revolution, and I think whoever thinks like that, you're either voting for Trump or you're not going to vote for the liberal, and it's that hate for liberals. It's again, I made that metaphor up about the guy who's getting laid. They don't. In fact, in a certain sense, that's the way the Republicans are. They want to dictate what a woman's body does.
Well, wait a minute. I know of one, I think, MAGA person who's getting laid, and that's Kid Rock. And what I'm hoping, I'm really hoping at the Kennedy Center that the wedding will take place there. Who just put up Peter Thiel? I think
David.
There's a good.
David did.
You know what, David? Try this on for size. Thiel is the mentor and financial supporter of J.D. Vance. So Thiel may be playing a game ahead of everybody and said Trump will succeed or fail, but I'll get my boy Vance in there and he'll be the Musk of Vance. We don't know what. But what I'm hoping, back to Kid Rock and Lauren Boebert, I hope they do get married. I hope they get married at the Kennedy Center, because I can get there and I can see the wedding. I'd like to see that.
But you remember just the old expression, Dave, like politics make strange bedfellows. And I think that's what's happened. We had the perfect storm, and they rallied around the cause. And the scariest part is people like you and me. And this is why people who do come on, they'll say, okay, there's two liberal white guys, old liberal white guys, and they're doing the same old shit. That's not the way we see it. You know what I mean? But that's the way they do. And we are the evil ones. Okay?
Right. Well, I've said that before. You can take everything negative said that's a generalization, right? That MAGA says about us, and we feel that way about them. I mean, we do. I mean, and there you are. Now see, David, it didn't take us long that you and I agree on something. Now, I don't mean that to be, surprise, we agree on something.
But why, then why, if you know that, and if you're going to look at it in a utilitarian fashion where you can say, okay, this group's bad and this group's bad, and I'm talking to you, Dave, but I'm really talking to everybody, but you have to be able to parse, this is the worst, and this is a lot worse. I mean, it's 100 degrees in this room, and there's 82 in this room. Both are uncomfortable, but we know which one's worse. But yet people are adamant, and they'll just go right down to their grave and say, I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm not going to vote for the Democrat. And so you make it easier, and you actually kind of spite yourself, because look, David and I, David Price, we disagree with a lot of Democrats.
And we disagree with
we don't like
right?
weak Democrats. We don't like Merrick Garland. We can't even know if he's a Democrat. He might be a Republican, but
no. Well, I'll jump in here just for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I think Democrats sometimes, with their support, are counterproductive. Now, I think every trans person in the world has the right to be who they believe they are, right? If you want to say you're whatever, last I looked, there are 72 distinctions in gender. Pick any of them. But, I'm not so sure that if you were a man with a man's body, that you should be able to compete in sports. I think that's an issue we could discuss. But I think automatically conservatives think, they want the trans to, to do this or do that. I mean, I think there's things that we could discuss, but we're not going to discuss because right now they're non-discussable.
There's some things that are non-negotiable, and the way we see it, look, we can say that there are oligarchs on the other side, but I don't want to peg everybody. We know there's a crisis in the environment. There's a crisis with free speech. There's a crisis in a woman's right to choose. And these are all just really clear cut, and it's so easy for me to vote Democratic because of that.
Well, because
not because I'm a Democrat.
There are, look, if you actually believe in your heart, that abortion is a sin, right? There's not much room to maneuver.
Well, you don't have one, and you yourself don't have one.
And that was going to be my next point. Then I suppose you would get the argument, well, it's my duty to bring what I believe to everyone else. And that's where we part company.
Right. Because
that's
now
where we part.
I can say the same thing. And if I have my hand on the button, then I can decide your life.
Yeah, what I would say, it's very simple with me. It's not complex. Again, as I've said 1,000 times, and will continue to say, I'm not coming from a Christian background. I'm not a Christian. I do not believe in the concept of heaven and hell as presented. I think the Bible is great literature. I think it has learning, all of that. But anyway, the simplest thing for me is it is a decision to be made by really three different abortion. Number one is the woman. Number two is the husband, father, if he's there, but the woman overrides that. And the doctor is more important than the husband, probably if there's a medical issue, but the woman only, the woman, in the end, it is her body, her choice. To me, that's simple.
Well, not only that, I mean, I look at it from a philosophical viewpoint. Those people who believe that abortion is murder should understand that birth is murder, because when you decide to have a child, you're going to give that child an eventual death. It may be a lot sooner than you think. Just because somebody's born, you don't just assume it's going to be healthy. You have no idea whether that's going to be healthy, and you don't even know if you can take care of it. I mean, I better see $100,000 in your bank account before you decide to have a kid, because essentially what you've done is you've created a baby machine, and you're causing death too, because that child takes up resources like anybody else. And as we know on this planet, what you taketh hurts the next one. You have to take from something else. Now, I'm not accusing the child of this or that, but when you make a decision to create something, you perform that biological experiment to create something. That child could have cancer. You have to take care of it. It will die. You're now going to give it the existential dread. It may not be immediate, but it may be in 2 years. It may be in 20 years. So to say that abortion is evil and murder, I could tell you that having a child is actual murder, because you're murdering more than just the child, in the sense that it will eventually die, and it could be an ill child, and that happens a lot, of course. So it's something one has to think about philosophically. You just can't.
I'm sorry. Do you think you're influenced by the fact that when you were, I think it was when you were 3, your parents drove to Iowa and threw you out of the car, and then somehow you made it back? Is that influencing your decision at all? Remember when they threw you out of the car when you were 3, or you don't remember that?
Who are you talking to?
You.
Me?
Yeah. That didn't influence your decision?
No, I don't even know what you're talking about. But
I know you do.
The point is that the religious people who believe that they have the right to tell somebody else that that's murder must understand that your very choice to have a child puts that child in jeopardy, and it puts everything else in jeopardy. And don't forget, there are other things that, if we want to say that that's murder, well, I can say to anybody, well, there's a Holocaust in your stomach right now, dinner. And because that whatever
what?
that, yes. If you,
oh my God,
no, and I'm serious.
I know you are.
If you are going to kill an animal who has a vested consciousness, in fact, an animal that's 5 years old or 10 years old has probably more of a vested consciousness than an infant at the age of a month. So you're causing a lot of pain. You can say what you want, whether you think that's important or not. But that thing, if it feels pain, it matters to it. Okay, and just because you can do algebra and that animal can't, doesn't mean that you're not creating death. That is murder. That is pain. It may not be pain to you because you enjoy the chicken parmesan or you enjoy the steak. But if you are going to say that somebody is committing murder by having an abortion, you yourself are guilty of murder. Now, it may not be to your liking that it doesn't follow the Bible's rule of what murder is, but you are causing, I'm talking about you, Dave, just anybody philosophically, you are causing pain and suffering, and you haven't seen the slaughterhouses. You don't know what that's like. Those animals know damn well what's going on. You stick a knife up a pig's ass, it'll tell you that it feels pain. And we should be lucky that we grew as human beings, because if there were, an alien, not me, Dave, but somebody smarter than us, and they ate us, you wouldn't like that. So these people who make these decisions are making it based on religious mores, and I refuse to be told what's moral and what's not from a 5,000-year-old book. So there is that issue. It's a lot more difficult than saying, is this murder or not? Because once you make that statement, understand, we can apply that a lot of different ways. Gary, that's up to you. If you don't find that, I don't know if you're talking about me, Gary, but it's not ridiculous to the cow that's slaughtered in the slaughterhouse. Now, again, I don't know if I can't tell from the chat, Gary, whether you're talking about me or not. But if you can admit that there's pain there, and I've seen it, then you'll understand what I'm saying.
I'm worried. The only thing I'm worried about in your conversation, Brian, is you were very explicit about sticking the knife up a pig's ass. Did you do that? Or how do you know? Is that from personal?
No, but essentially that's what you're doing when you're deciding to eat meat. When you're a carnivore, this is what happens. Mm-hmm. I don't care that people eat meat. If you just admit what you're, at least have the guts that, I'm causing suffering to those animals, and that's it. You have a paid assassin to do the work, but you are exacerbating it, and that's also creating a problem with climate change, with methane. So this thing goes on and on and on and on. And animals have it bad. I don't care what anybody says. That is a Holocaust. And that is every bit as cruel in terms of suffering and pain of a vested conscience as it is a human being. And until this planet starts to understand what they're doing, because that thing can't do algebra, it's vicious. And nobody likes this. Look, this is the way it is. In an ambivalent, uncaring universe, this is just what happens. Okay, people have to feed off of this and that, but that doesn't make it right. And all I'm saying is you cannot justify accusing somebody of murder because they have an abortion when you yourself endorse these slaughterhouses, or you endorse a child being born without its consent. I mean, if somebody said to you, you're going to get cancer at the age of 4, and you're going to have pain for the next 6 years, but you knew this before you were born, would you want to be born? Dave, I'll let you answer that for the crowd. You probably would not want to be born, would you? And I'm not saying every child's going to have cancer, but you don't know. You're rolling the fucking dice.
Right. All of what you said is true, but I'm going to say something else. It's not fair. And I agree with you. The universe is not fair. It's not equitable. But would I choose? That's a thought experiment that doesn't really enter into it.
Can I just interrupt with David? When it sounds like he's convinced abortion is murder, I am convinced that you are ending the life of that organism. But the ball game isn't the life or the death, David. The ball game is ouch, the suffering. The first thing somebody will say, well, when I die, I don't want to feel the pain. We all know that. I'm saying if you can limit the pain and they're not even conscious as an embryo or whatever, then it's better than bringing it in and subjecting it to the risk of cancers and things like that, unless you know with a surety to some degree that you can take care of it and that it'll be healthy. Because if you cannot, like most people do, most people don't have an easy way of it with their kids on this planet. Okay, if we look at it from our perspective, maybe it's fine. But just because I'm not talking about you specifically, Dave, but you're having a happy life or things are going well for you, that doesn't mean it's happening for the next person. It doesn't mean for you that you're going to be real happy. I could have issues 10 years from now and say, holy shit, I never knew I was going to go through this. Dave could be, half roadkill, and he's going to be in pain and be a paraplegic for the rest of his life. He wouldn't like that. Okay? Well, I'm just saying, Dave.
I know, but
those things can happen, and they must register with people before they make these decisions. And when I say that it's murder, it's not murder in the sense that it was a conscious being that was thinking and going through. It had no vested consciousness at 3 months. But an animal that's 5 years old of age, it has a vested consciousness. And now it has every right to exist in the same tranquility that we do. Okay? Just because it can't do something or because you believe you're above this, we're not above anything. We're from the same stock.
I'd like to ask you just one question, Brian, about that. Okay, you said earlier that the two parties, you got to pick one that's they're not exactly all the same.
Right.
I'm going to turn that question to you. Is a slaughterhouse the same as the gas chambers in the Holocaust, or is it
for the suffering? Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
They're the same.
They're the same. If the pain is the pain and there's a vested consciousness, I do not discriminate between beings, whether you're a rabbit or a turkey or a human being, because that's what you're saying is that the human beings are more important.
Well, I'm not saying anything. I'm asking you a question.
But the question itself will make people who are religious. Okay, then I'll say it exactly as it is. A vested consciousness is a vested consciousness, and if that sentient being feels pain, whether it's a human being or whether it's an animal, it doesn't matter. There's no equals. There's no not equal to sign. Okay, we just disregard what happens at the slaughterhouse because it doesn't matter because you never see it. But if you had to be the one to do that, I'm talking everybody. You might have a different opinion of it. If it was your dog or your cat that you loved and then you decide they wanted to eat it, you wouldn't like it. Pain is pain. Why am I more important than a cow? Who says I'm more important?
Well, you're not.
No, I'm not. And neither are you.
No, I am.
Well, see, there you go. Then this is the idea, the anthropomorphism, that you think a human being is the end all be all. I don't get that.
I didn't. You always bring up this idea.
Okay, well, I'm just saying a slaughterhouse is a Holocaust. It's what it is. I can't get around it.
Stop for a moment. You're back with the same argument. It's what you believe it is. That's all. Just say that. Just like I told David, same thing with you. You believe it is.
Yes.
Okay. That's all.
And Dave's asked me at what point. Of course, I am not qualified to give you an exact answer, but
interesting question.
I would suggest that prior to coming out of the birth canal, I certainly wouldn't wait till the last trimester to do something like that. But I'm saying if you don't have a fully developed central nervous system with all the pain receptors and the ability to understand that pain and feel it, and it's got to stop. But I'll say this much. I don't want to see anything go through pain. And if there is torture and pain and they do recognize it, then I'm against it. Okay, at that point. Now, you got to figure out which point that is. But for someone to make the decision to have a child and call it murder when they themselves are going to put that child in risk immediately. And not only that, the child that is born, every human being, there's a cost to something that is living. Every breath you take, you're going to cause some pain with something else.
If you carry what you're saying to the extreme, doesn't that mean that no one should ever give birth because that child is going to die at some point?
Yes.
So nobody should ever give birth to anyone.
Right. In this type of universe, you're right. Yes, that's why I take an antinatalist view. I wouldn't kill people. I wouldn't say let's hit the button, but I think the best choice for us is to end this painlessly.
Is just so everybody starting tomorrow should not have a child.
Yes.
You really
yes,
believe that?
I really believe that.
Okay.
But if you are, and I know we can, then you have.
There's no other if you are. That's what you believe.
I believe that. Yes, I think that it would be best because until we can find a universe that isn't built on suffering and pain. Absolutely. And my universe will be better than yours because at least there'll be. You can't have pain if you never experience it, or can't experience it.
Carrying for what you just said, we should never have given birth to Michael. And
I shouldn't have been born. Yes, because the unborn.
Well, I agree with that.
How about of all the billions of people who didn't get born? Are they complaining right now?
That doesn't stand.
I'm trying to make a point. You can't feel pain if you haven't been born, so you're not losing anything.
So in other words, what you're saying is just end humanity tomorrow.
No, I would say do it gracefully, do it over time, have less than 2 children, and then eventually it'll just die out, and then that way you can end this carnage called. So
you find no
evolution
in life.
It won't happen. I mean, I've done
Brian,
statements.
Stop.
I've been on YouTube about this.
Okay, so what you're saying is there's absolutely no reason, and you don't see any goodness in life?
I see, again, from utilitarian views, I see most of life is suffering. And even the things that we consider, like we deal with during the day, is usually not quite as good as we think it is. We have a romantic view of the past. Most of us have that. And the reality is most of life is difficult. I mean,
so you would not want to have the experiences that you've had living to be whatever you are now.
I think that, look, I think that if all animals and people could have my life, you might go away, or I would say yes. But unless you can make that system work without the pain, I say yes. Just don't do it. It's too messy. It's too messy. It is gladiator warfare. Evolution is horrible. And that is the name of the game in this universe. It's actually not funny. It's very painful.
It is. No, it is funny because what you're saying is, what you're saying is you don't want to experience pain. That's really what it's coming down to.
That's right. Pain is bad. You get your Dave.
Life is better. Life is better.
As Emendem used to say, it's a good analogy. You can have your choice of 2 things: nail in the eye or cupcake. You can't get cupcake with everything here. Okay. You're going to get nail in the eye most of the time.
Why would you even expect to get cupcake?
Okay, you remember Dr. Frankenstein. So if Frankenstein can give you 6 good Frankensteins and 4 that are lying in the gutter, do you keep going? Mm-hmm. Okay, well then that's your philosophy. But, it came up with Dostoevsky. So, okay, now I'll ask you the same question that we go to the Brothers Karamazov.
Okay.
So somebody says to you, Dave, you're now God. You're God of the universe, and you can have an almost perfect universe. But you're only given this situation. Everybody lives a wonderful life. Everything's great. But in order to have this, one child has to be put in a box and suffer for eternity. Would you agree with that universe?
Do not make that decision.
You don't want that decision, but you're making it for us anyway. By bringing somebody in, you don't know. You know there's going to be someone that's going to have pain, and all you have to do is look around the world.
All I'm going to say is there is beauty in the world and there's pain in the world. What you're saying, or what I hear you saying, is that you don't get to the beauty, we just deal with the pain. And because there's pain, there should be no more world.
Because there's
correct?
Example.
Am I correct? Yes or no?
No. Because you're painting a picture of just 2 sides to it. A tadpole. There are 10,000 tadpoles that are born to survive. I don't call that a success. That means the other ones have to have a brutal.
Who rates it a success? What are you talking about?
It's an analogy to what you're saying. You're saying there's beauty in the world and there's pain in the world. There's
You can
always pain. There's always death. And there's always
Correct.
existential
Of
dread.
course there is.
And not everybody lives like you or like me. Okay,
I'm
we're the
not
lucky
saying-
ones.
I'm not
Most don't.
saying that. I'm not saying that. Well, why should you make the decision for them then?
I'm not. That's my point. I'm saying
you are
nobody
if you're
will do
saying
that. You asked me what I would do if I had the
gotcha.
decision. I would say
Thank God.
just let it go gracefully.
Then I'm going to say, of the two, I'm glad Donald Trump is president tonight and not Brian Weinstein. And I'll end with that.
All right. Dave and I have had, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, David and I, we haven't talked this philosophical discussion for a long time, but we've done this before. Okay. This is not the first time.
And I support
And we have
Brian
fun
Wright.
with it, but it's not
And
fun, but it's.
I support Brian's right to be wrong with my dying breath.
And Dave's
Brian
wrong,
points-
philosophically wrong. But pragmatically, I would say Dave's right. I've said this before. I'm an antinatalist, but I understand that it.
You don't have a. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're against the Navy? You're an anti-navalist.
Stop. I'm an antinatalist, but I do understand that it's never going to catch up. It's not in the cards. Okay. Right. At least not in this point. That's not going to happen. Okay. It's not in the cards. I know it will not happen. I can only say it took me a while to get to this point, but
wow.
Well, but I'm far from the only one with this philosophy. All you have to do is read David Benatar. You know, people understand who David Benatar is.
Is David Benatar? Is that Pat Benatar's husband?
No, he just happens to have the same name. Okay. All right. Listen, I do have to go. Dave, it was a great show, and believe me, when Dave and I do this, we just talk like this all the time. We're good friends, and it's just the way it is.
Well,
okay?
speak for yourself, you world ender.
Okay. See, now you guys completely do not see what David said about AI. What did Dave say about AI? Let me just check and see if it's there. This wasn't you, David. The other guy.
No, I know.
AI governance will solve all our problems.
I'm going to answer that, and you already brought it up.
You answered. I'm not answering that one.
No. I'll bring it up. Frankenstein's monster, which we misnamed Frankenstein, was not the monster. The monster was the creator of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Okay. Now, same thing with AI. I would say this. AI has the chance to benefit mankind better than anything that's come along. It also has the chance of being the most destructive thing we've done. It depends. In and of itself, AI is neither good nor bad. It's how it's used.
Yes.
And that's true if you're talking about the gun, you're talking about the Bible, you're talking about abortion. Anything is not in and of itself, I believe, good or bad. It's how it's used. Except when Brian has a position and then we just know to go the other way.
We'll leave that, and I'm going to leave it here with my name. Pain is bad. Cupcakes are good. And I'll leave it at that. Think about that.
Brian is bad. Dave is good. I got it.
Dave, I hope you don't have any pain, okay?
I do. I'm 72. Of course I've pain.
All right,
Brian.
all right.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Right.
And we
We'll
hope
be
to
there on
see you
Sunday.
regularly on Sunday.
Okay, gotcha.